the fastest way to lose the truth is to trust your first impression. Adrian Sullivan had built his reputation on reading people with remarkable accuracy. As the alpha who managed one of the city's most influential business organizations, he believed every decision depended on careful observation, patience, and discipline. Those instincts had protected his company, his employees, and the peaceful estate he called home for years. Yet on one ordinary autumn afternoon, those same instincts would lead him toward the greatest misunderstanding of his life. Adrian returned to the estate several hours earlier than expected after an important meeting was postponed without warning. The long driveway was lined with brilliant maple trees glowing beneath soft afternoon sunlight, and the familiar calm of home settled over him as he stepped inside. The household staff greeted him warmly before returning to their daily routines. Somewhere upstairs, cheerful laughter echoed through the hallway where young Oliver, the little boy Liam cared for each day, was finishing an afternoon lesson. Adrian smiled briefly before removing his jacket and walking toward the laundry room to retrieve a forgotten folder he believed had been left nearby the previous evening. As he approached the half-open doorway, he suddenly stopped without making a sound. Inside the bright laundry room, Liam Carter stood completely unaware that anyone had arrived home. Wearing a simple cream knit sweater beneath a light beige cardigan and comfortable trousers, the gentle Omega Nanny carefully held one of Adrian's freshly laundered black boxer briefs in both hands. Liam's expression was unusually serious. He slowly lifted the clean fabric closer, paused thoughtfully, then lowered it again while quietly writing several notes inside a small notebook resting on the folding table. A moment later, he repeated the same careful inspection before placing the garment inside a separate laundry basket labeled for additional cleaning. Adrian remained frozen in the hallway. Nothing about Liam's movements appeared playful or careless. In fact, every action looked surprisingly methodical, almost professional. Yet without understanding the reason, the entire scene seemed impossible to explain. Adrian instinctively stepped back before Liam noticed him. He chose not to interrupt and quietly walked away, carrying with him only the image he had just witnessed. Throughout the remainder of the afternoon, Adrian found it difficult to focus on anything else. During dinner, Liam behaved exactly as he always had. He helped Oliver wash his hands, reminded him to finish his vegetables, thanked the kitchen staff for preparing the meal, and politely asked Adrian whether tomorrow's schedule had changed because Oliver had a science museum visit planned. Every word sounded natural. Every smile appeared sincere. Adrian answered calmly, but his thoughts remained fixed on the strange moment inside the laundry room. Later that evening, after Oliver had fallen asleep and the estate had grown quiet, Adrian passed the laundry room once more. The additional basket still stood exactly where Liam had left it. Resting beside it was the same small notebook, now carefully closed. Adrian considered opening it for only a moment before deciding against it. He had always believed trust meant respecting another person's privacy. Even so, countless unanswered questions continued to circle through his mind. Why had Liam separated only a few specific clothing items from the rest of the laundry? Why had he inspected them so carefully? And why had he quietly written observations without mentioning any of it to anyone? Standing alone beneath the warm hallway lights, Adrian made a silent decision. He would not confront Liam based on one confusing moment. Instead, he would watch patiently, gather facts, and discover the complete truth before allowing assumptions to become conclusions, never realizing that every hour he delayed asking a simple question would allow an innocent misunderstanding to grow into something far more complicated than either of them could imagine. The following morning, Adrian followed his usual routine with the same calm precision that had always defined him, yet something inside him had quietly changed. Every ordinary moment now seemed connected to the unanswered questions that had settled in his mind the previous afternoon. He greeted Oliver before breakfast, reviewed several business reports over coffee, and thanked Liam for preparing the child's lunch exactly as he always did. Nothing about Liam's behavior appeared unusual. He smiled warmly, spoke politely, and moved through the estate with the same quiet kindness that had earned everyone's complete trust. Even so, Adrian found himself noticing details he had never paid attention to before. After breakfast, Liam gathered the family's laundry as part of his daily routine. Adrian happened to pass the hallway just in time to see Liam gently separate several clothing items into a different fabric bag before carrying everything downstairs. Once again, one of Adrian's black boxer briefs was placed into the smaller bag rather than the main laundry basket. Adrian stopped only long enough to observe before continuing toward his office without saying a word. Throughout the afternoon, he remained unusually distracted during meetings held inside the estate library. Financial reports, investment summaries, and construction updates all received his attention, yet his thoughts repeatedly returned to the same quiet image inside the laundry room. He had built his career by refusing to make decisions without evidence, so he reminded himself that one unexplained action did not automatically mean something inappropriate had occurred. Still, uncertainty continued to grow each time another unexplained detail appeared. Later that day, Oliver accidentally spilled orange juice across his favorite sweater while painting in the family room. Liam immediately carried the stained clothing downstairs to treat it before the stain could set. Adrian quietly followed several minutes later under the simple excuse of retrieving a document from the storage cabinet nearby. Through the slightly open laundry room door, he once again observed Liam working carefully. This time, Liam unfolded several freshly cleaned garments beneath bright overhead lighting. He examined small sections of fabric with remarkable concentration before writing additional notes inside the same small notebook Adrian had seen earlier. Occasionally, Liam leaned closer to one specific garment for only a brief moment before comparing it with another piece of clothing. His expression remained thoughtful rather than emotional, almost like someone conducting careful research instead of completing household chores. Adrian noticed something else as well. Liam wore a pair of disposable gloves while handling only a few selected garments. The remaining laundry was folded normally without any special treatment. Every action seemed intentional, yet none of it made sense. Rather than stepping inside and asking a direct question, Adrian quietly walked away once more. He convinced himself that careful observation would eventually reveal the explanation without creating unnecessary embarrassment for either of them. During dinner that evening, Oliver excitedly described an upcoming science activity at school involving simple chemistry experiments. Liam listened with genuine enthusiasm and promised to help him build a small display at home over the weekend. Adrian glanced toward Liam as those words settled into his thoughts. Chemistry, the notebook, the careful inspections, the separate laundry basket. None of the pieces fit together, but they also refused to disappear from his mind. After Oliver went to bed, Adrian stood alone beside the library window overlooking the softly illuminated gardens. For the first time in years, he questioned whether his greatest strength, the ability to observe patiently before acting, might also become his greatest weakness. He could end every uncertainty with one honest conversation, yet something continued urging him to wait for one more clue. Unaware that Liam was quietly trying to solve a completely different mystery of his own, Adrian chose silence once again, allowing suspicion and curiosity to grow side by side, while the simple truth remained only a single unanswered question away. By the third day, Adrian could no longer dismiss the growing pattern as coincidence. Every observation seemed small when viewed alone, yet together they formed a puzzle that refused to leave his thoughts. He still treated Liam with the same courtesy and respect as always, but now every ordinary moment carried an unspoken question. Beneath the surface, that morning Adrian finished a video conference earlier than expected and walked through the estate to check on Oliver before leaving for another meeting. He found the little boy happily building a model solar system in the study, while Liam patiently helped him paint tiny planets in bright colors. The warm interaction looked exactly as it always had. Liam encouraged Oliver to keep trying whenever the paintbrush slipped, praised his creativity, and laughed gently when the child accidentally colored his own fingertips blue instead of the model. Watching them together made Adrian hesitate. Nothing about Liam suggested dishonesty or hidden motives. If anything, his kindness appeared completely genuine. Later that afternoon, Adrian changed clothes after returning from the estate gym and quietly placed the garments into the laundry hamper. Less than an hour afterward, he noticed Liam carrying the same basket downstairs. Curious but determined to remain unnoticed, Adrian paused near the hallway outside the laundry room. Through the partially open door, he watched Liam remove only a handful of specific clothing items before placing the rest into the washing machine. Once again, one of Adrian's black boxer briefs was separated into the smaller container resting beside the folding table. Liam carefully unfolded the fabric beneath a bright inspection lamp, compared it with several handwritten notes inside the familiar notebook, then placed a small adhesive label onto a transparent storage envelope before sealing the garment inside. Adrian frowned slightly. The procedure looked far too organized to be random. Before Liam could continue, his mobile phone rang. Adrian stepped farther into the hallway to avoid being seen, but Liam's quiet voice remained audible through the open doorway. "Yes," Liam said calmly. "I have documented another sample. The pattern is becoming more consistent. I would appreciate confirmation as soon as the laboratory finishes the analysis." "Thank you." The conversation ended only seconds later. Adrian remained completely still. Laboratory analysis. Sample. Pattern. Those words echoed repeatedly inside his mind. His first impression, from several days earlier, no longer matched what he had just witnessed, yet the situation had become even more mysterious. What kind of laboratory needed clothing samples from his home? Why had Liam never mentioned any of this? That evening, Adrian returned to his office carrying more questions than answers. He opened the estate maintenance records, reviewed recent cleaning contracts, and noticed that a premium textile care company had begun servicing the household only a few weeks earlier. The timing immediately caught his attention. Before he could study the paperwork further, Oliver ran into the office carrying his completed solar system model with enormous pride. Adrian smiled warmly, complimented the careful work, and helped him place the project safely on a nearby shelf. As Oliver hurried away to show Liam, Adrian quietly looked toward the open doorway. He realized every decision he made now affected not only himself, but also the child who trusted both adults without hesitation. For that reason, he refused to let suspicion become judgment. He would continue searching for facts until the complete picture finally emerged, unaware that Liam was only one laboratory report away from uncovering a truth that would completely overturn every assumption Adrian had made since the moment he first looked through the laundry room door. The following afternoon, everything changed with a single phone call. Liam was preparing afternoon snacks for Oliver when his mobile phone vibrated quietly on the kitchen counter. He glanced at the screen, immediately recognized the laboratory's number, and politely excused himself after making sure Oliver was safely occupied with a puzzle in the family room. Carrying his notebook beneath one arm, Liam stepped into the small greenhouse overlooking the estate gardens where the conversation could remain private without interrupting the child's activities. Adrian happened to be walking through the nearby hallway after finishing a conference call and unintentionally noticed Liam disappear into the greenhouse. Without meaning to eavesdrop, he paused when he heard the laboratory representative calmly reviewing the newest results. "The chemical residue is present again," the specialist explained. "The concentration remains low, but it appears consistently on the same category of garments. We recommend discontinuing the current textile treatment immediately until the source is identified." Liam thanked the specialist sincerely before carefully writing every detail into his notebook. His expression showed relief rather than fear, as though weeks of careful observation had finally produced the answer he had hoped to confirm. Adrian quietly stepped away before Liam returned, his thoughts racing faster than ever. Every assumption he had made during the previous days suddenly began collapsing beneath a completely different explanation. That evening, Liam requested a private meeting with Adrian after Oliver had gone to bed. Adrian agreed immediately, inviting Liam into the estate library, where warm fireplace light filled the elegant room. For several quiet seconds, neither of them spoke. Liam gently placed his notebook, several sealed laboratory reports, and a folder containing photographs onto the large oak table. "I owe you an explanation," Liam said calmly. Adrian nodded without interrupting. Liam slowly opened the notebook to its earliest pages. Every date, observation, and handwritten note documented a careful pattern. Several weeks earlier, he had noticed an unusual chemical odor lingering on a few of Adrian's garments after they returned from the estate's newly contracted luxury laundry service. The smell appeared only on certain fabrics and disappeared after additional washing, making it difficult for anyone else to notice. Concerned that repeated exposure might eventually affect the household, especially young Oliver, Liam quietly began documenting every occurrence instead of making accusations without evidence. Because he had previously completed college coursework in environmental health before becoming a nanny, he understood the importance of collecting consistent samples before requesting laboratory testing. Adrian listened silently while Liam carefully organized every report across the table. The laboratory findings confirmed that a specialty textile treatment used by the outside laundry company occasionally left behind trace chemical residue due to inconsistent quality control. The levels were not immediately dangerous, but continued exposure was strongly discouraged until the supplier corrected the problem. Liam finally looked directly at Adrian with complete honesty. "The afternoon you saw me holding your clothing, I was comparing the odor with earlier samples before sending another fabric swatch to the laboratory. I never imagined you might see only that moment without everything surrounding it." Adrian slowly lowered his eyes toward the notebook resting before him. Every confusing action now fit perfectly into place. The careful inspections, the separate laundry basket, the disposable gloves, the phone calls, the handwritten notes. None of them had ever been connected to anything inappropriate. They had always been part of a quiet effort to protect everyone living inside the estate. Adrian drew a slow breath before speaking. "I believed I was patiently searching for the truth," he admitted softly. "Instead, I spent days allowing my first impression to become its own story." Liam offered a gentle smile. "And I spent days believing I could solve the problem alone instead of explaining what I was doing." In that peaceful library, surrounded by evidence instead of assumptions, both men realized the misunderstanding had never been created by one confusing moment alone. It had grown because two good people had allowed silence to occupy the space where one honest conversation should have begun. The following morning, the Kingsley estate felt noticeably different. Nothing about the elegant halls, the carefully maintained gardens, or the familiar routines had changed, yet Adrian carried himself with a quiet humility that everyone around him could sense. After years of believing that patience alone always produced the correct answer, he now understood that observation without communication could become its own kind of mistake. Before leaving for work, Adrian invited Liam to join him for breakfast after Oliver had started his online music lesson. Warm sunlight filled the dining room as fresh coffee, fruit, and homemade pastries rested neatly on the polished table. Adrian looked at Liam with sincere gratitude before speaking. "I owe you more than an apology," he said calmly. "You protected this family while I questioned your actions instead of asking about them." Liam smiled gently and shook his head. "We both made the same mistake from different directions. I believed I needed complete proof before involving anyone else. You believed you needed complete certainty before asking a simple question. Neither of us intended to create distance." Adrian nodded thoughtfully. "Then let us make sure we never repeat it." Together, they reviewed every laboratory report one final time before Adrian contacted the estate's operations director. By mid-morning, a meeting had been scheduled with the luxury textile company responsible for servicing the household. Adrian refused to accuse anyone without evidence, choosing instead to present the documented findings respectfully and request a complete review of their cleaning procedures. The company's senior management responded with immediate concern. Independent specialists were invited to inspect the manufacturing process, and within days they confirmed that one recently introduced fabric treatment occasionally left harmless but unnecessary chemical residue because of inconsistent equipment calibration. The company accepted responsibility, temporarily suspended the affected process, replaced every treated garment at no cost, and implemented stricter quality control standards for future clients. Adrian appreciated the transparent response because it reflected the same principle he expected within his own organization. Rather than ending the matter there, he instructed his estate management team to establish additional supplier verification procedures for every outside service entering the property. Liam quietly helped create practical household guidelines that focused on safety, clear documentation, and open communication instead of unnecessary suspicion. Several weeks later, the atmosphere throughout the estate had fully returned to its familiar warmth. Oliver happily prepared for his annual science fair with Liam's help, proudly explaining to Adrian that good scientists always collected evidence before making conclusions. Adrian smiled at the unexpected lesson. That is true, he replied. But the best scientists also ask questions whenever they do not understand something. Liam laughed softly across the room, immediately recognizing the deeper meaning behind those words. That evening, Adrian walked through the laundry room once again. The separate basket was gone. The notebook now rested openly on a nearby shelf, and every mystery that had once filled the room had quietly disappeared. Instead of uncertainty, he felt only appreciation for the care Liam had invested in protecting everyone inside the estate. Before leaving, Adrian paused beside the folding table where the misunderstanding had first begun. "Funny," he said with a gentle smile. Liam looked up curiously. "What is?" Adrian glanced around the peaceful room. "The place where I believed I had discovered a problem turned out to be the place where someone was quietly solving one." Liam closed the notebook and smiled warmly. Sometimes the truth waits patiently until people are ready to see the whole picture. Adrian knew those words would remain with him long after the conversation ended, because they reminded him that trust was never strengthened by silent assumptions. It was strengthened every time two people chose honesty before uncertainty had the chance to become its own convincing story. Autumn gradually gave way to early winter, and life inside the Kingsley estate settled into a peaceful rhythm that felt almost effortless. The misunderstanding that had once quietly separated Adrian and Liam no longer lingered between them. Instead, it became the foundation for a new habit they practiced every day. Whenever either of them noticed something unusual, they spoke openly before allowing assumptions to grow. The simple change transformed the atmosphere throughout the household. Oliver noticed it first, although he could not explain why. The little boy simply smiled more often because the adults around him smiled more often as well. Every morning, Adrian joined Oliver and Liam for breakfast before leaving for the office. What had once been hurried business conversations slowly became warm. Family traditions filled with laughter, stories about school, and plans for the weekend. Liam continued caring for Oliver with the same patience and kindness that had always defined him, but Adrian now understood just how thoughtful Liam truly was. He often noticed small improvements around the estate that quietly appeared without anyone requesting them. Safety labels were updated inside the cleaning storage room. Household schedules became easier for every employee to follow. Children's activity supplies were organized more carefully than before. Liam rarely mentioned these changes because he believed helping others did not require recognition. One Saturday afternoon, Adrian returned home carrying several large boxes from the office. Oliver eagerly ran to help, but Liam gently reminded him to carry only the lighter packages. As they unpacked everything inside the library, Adrian smiled when he discovered that one box contained a brand new air quality monitoring system that his facilities department had ordered after reviewing the supplier investigation. Liam looked at the equipment with quiet surprise. Adrian noticed the expression immediately. "You inspired this," he admitted. "If you had not cared enough to investigate a detail everyone else ignored, none of us would have realized how many small improvements were possible." Liam lowered his eyes modestly before answering. "I only wanted everyone here to stay healthy." Adrian nodded. "And now many more families will benefit because we chose to learn from the experience instead of pretending it never happened." During the following weeks, Adrian expanded those improvements beyond the estate itself. Every property managed by his company adopted updated supplier inspections, voluntary environmental testing, and clearer reporting procedures whenever employees noticed potential concerns. Rather than viewing careful observations as unnecessary interruptions, managers were encouraged to speak openly and investigate respectfully. Adrian frequently reminded them that protecting people always mattered more than protecting appearances. The new policies quickly earned praise from both employees and business partners because they reflected genuine responsibility instead of simple compliance. One quiet evening, after Oliver had fallen asleep, Adrian and Liam walked through the gardens where soft lights illuminated the winding stone paths beneath the bare maple branches. The peaceful silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. Adrian paused beside the small greenhouse where Liam had first received the laboratory results weeks earlier. "It is strange," Adrian said with a thoughtful smile. "I believed that phone call would confirm my fears. Instead, it corrected them." Liam looked toward the glowing windows of the estate before answering softly. "Sometimes the truth arrives very quietly. We only miss it when we are listening to our own assumptions instead." Adrian smiled with genuine appreciation. Thank you for refusing to ignore what you noticed. Liam returned the smile. And thank you for choosing to believe the evidence once you finally saw the whole picture. Together, they continued walking beneath the peaceful evening sky, both unaware that the greatest reward for their honesty had never been solving the mystery itself. It was discovering that trust became stronger every time it survived misunderstanding and returned through patient conversation, mutual respect, and the simple courage to ask one honest question before drawing a lasting conclusion. Winter slowly faded into spring, bringing new life not only to the gardens surrounding the Kingsley estate, but also to the relationships growing stronger inside its walls. The quiet understanding Adrian and Liam had built together continued to deepen through countless ordinary moments that never attracted attention, yet carried lasting meaning. Every conversation became a little easier. Every shared responsibility became a little lighter. The misunderstanding that had once created silent distance now served as a reminder that trust required daily care rather than perfect certainty. Oliver's school announced its annual Family Discovery Day, inviting parents and caregivers to participate in science activities designed to encourage curiosity and teamwork. Oliver excitedly insisted that both Adrian and Liam attend together because, in his words, the best projects need everyone. Adrian immediately rearranged his business schedule without hesitation. Years earlier, he might have delegated the event to someone else, believing work could not wait. Now he understood that the most meaningful investments rarely appeared on financial reports. On the morning of the event, families filled the elementary school gymnasium with colorful displays, creative experiments, and cheerful conversations. Oliver proudly presented a simple project demonstrating how careful observation and honest questions helped solve everyday problems. His display included labeled jars of clean water, treated fabric samples, and written explanations about why scientists always collected evidence before reaching conclusions. One teacher smiled warmly after reading Oliver's presentation. "Who taught you to think this way?" Oliver looked at Adrian and Liam before answering with complete confidence. "They both did. One taught me to notice details. The other taught me to ask questions before deciding what those details mean." Adrian and Liam exchanged quiet smiles, realizing that Oliver had absorbed the greatest lesson from their experience without ever knowing the misunderstanding that inspired it. After the school event ended, the three of them stopped at a neighborhood bakery before returning home. Oliver carefully chose 3 cinnamon rolls because he believed everyone deserved the same treat. While they sat together beside the front window, Adrian noticed Liam quietly watching families pass along the sidewalk. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked gently. Liam smiled. "I was remembering my first week at the estate. I hoped I could make Oliver feel safe. I never imagined this place would become home for me as well." Adrian considered those words carefully before responding. Home is not created by walls or property. It is created by the people who choose to protect one another. Liam nodded softly, appreciating the sincerity behind every word. Back at the estate, Oliver hurried into the garden to search for the first spring flowers beginning to bloom beneath the maple trees. Adrian and Liam followed at a slower pace, enjoying the peaceful afternoon sunlight. Near the greenhouse, they noticed several employees inspecting newly installed environmental monitoring equipment that had become standard throughout every Kingsley property. The improvements had already inspired similar safety programs within several partner organizations, proving that one careful observation could eventually benefit countless families. Adrian quietly reflected on how differently everything might have unfolded if he had confronted Liam with anger instead of patience, or if Liam had hidden his research after feeling misunderstood. Instead, honesty had transformed confusion into cooperation and uncertainty into lasting trust. As gentle spring breezes carried the scent of blooming flowers across the estate, Adrian realized the greatest success of his life had never been measured by business achievements alone. It was measured by the peaceful confidence shared among the people walking beside him, a confidence built through respect, humility, and the simple willingness to choose understanding before assumption every single day. Several months passed, and the Kingsley estate continued to flourish as a place where every person felt respected, valued, and heard. What had once been remembered as a quiet misunderstanding had gradually transformed into a meaningful lesson woven into the family's everyday life. Adrian no longer believed that leadership meant carrying every responsibility alone. Liam no longer believed that protecting others required silent sacrifice. Together, they had discovered that the strongest relationships were built through shared trust and honest conversations. As summer arrived, Oliver eagerly prepared for his 7th birthday celebration. Rather than hosting an extravagant event, he surprised everyone by asking for a community picnic in the estate gardens so he could invite classmates, neighbors, household employees, and their families. Adrian immediately supported the idea, explaining that the greatest celebrations were the ones that brought people together. Liam happily organized the activities, carefully planning games, outdoor science stations, children's art tables, and a small reading corner. Beneath the oldest maple tree, on the morning of the celebration, bright sunshine filled every corner of the estate. Colorful decorations lined the walking paths while fresh flowers surrounded long picnic tables covered with homemade food prepared by the estate kitchen. Children laughed as they explored the gardens, painted wooden birdhouses, and searched for hidden treasure cards placed throughout the grounds. Oliver proudly introduced Adrian and Liam to every friend, never separating them in conversation because, in his heart, they both represented family. During the afternoon, one of the visiting parents quietly approached Liam. She explained that her young daughter had developed an unusual skin irritation after using a recently purchased fabric treatment at home. Liam listened carefully before recommending that she discontinue using the product until it could be properly evaluated. Adrian overheard the conversation and smiled quietly. Months earlier, he might never have recognized the importance of such a simple exchange. Now he immediately contacted his facilities team and asked them to prepare an easy-to-understand household safety guide that could be shared freely with every family attending the event. By sunset, printed copies rested beside the garden entrance for anyone who wished to take one home. Several guests thanked Adrian for providing practical information without creating unnecessary fear. He simply replied that good decisions always began with accurate information and open communication. As the celebration drew to a close, Oliver gathered everyone beneath the large maple tree where he wanted to take a group photograph. Employees stood beside executives, neighbors stood beside friends, and children filled the front row with joyful smiles. Liam gently adjusted Oliver's collar before stepping into the picture. Adrian looked across the gathering and realized that the estate no longer represented success because of its size or reputation. It represented success because everyone standing together trusted one another. After the last guests departed, the three of them remained in the quiet garden watching the evening sky slowly fill with stars. Oliver held both Adrian's and Liam's hands as they walked toward the greenhouse where everything had quietly begun months earlier. Adrian paused for a moment before speaking softly. If I had asked one question that first afternoon, everything would have unfolded differently. Liam smiled with calm understanding. Perhaps, but then we might never have learned how valuable honest conversations truly are. Oliver looked up with innocent curiosity. What are you talking about? Adrian smiled warmly and gently squeezed the little boy's hand. Just an old lesson that helped us become a stronger family. Oliver nodded without fully understanding, yet he smiled anyway because he knew one thing with complete certainty. Whenever people cared enough to listen before judging, home always became a happier place. 5 years passed, and the memory of one confusing afternoon had slowly transformed into a lesson that quietly guided every decision made inside the Kingsley estate. Oliver had grown into a thoughtful young boy who loved asking questions before reaching conclusions, a habit that Adrian and Liam encouraged every single day. Visitors often admired the peaceful atmosphere surrounding the estate, but very few knew that its greatest strength had been built from one misunderstanding that was never allowed to become permanent. Adrian continued leading his company with confidence, yet his definition of leadership had changed forever. Every new employee received training that emphasized respectful communication, careful observation, and the importance of speaking honestly whenever concerns arose. Liam became an essential advisor for the estate's family wellness programs, helping create practical guidelines that encouraged healthy living, environmental awareness, and open conversations throughout every household under Adrian's care. Together, they proved that compassion and responsibility could strengthen both families and successful organizations. One warm autumn afternoon, Oliver arrived home from school carrying a history assignment about meaningful family memories. His teacher had asked every student to bring one object that represented an important lesson passed from one generation to another. Oliver immediately hurried into the library where Adrian and Liam were organizing books for the coming weekend. "Can I choose something from our family?" he asked with excitement. Adrian smiled warmly before leading Oliver toward a beautifully crafted wooden keepsake box resting on the highest bookshelf. Liam recognized the box immediately because neither of them had opened it in several years. Adrian carefully placed it upon the large oak table before lifting the polished lid. Inside rested the small notebook filled with Liam's careful observations, the laboratory reports that had revealed the truth, one sealed evidence envelope that had been preserved only as a reminder of the experience, and a handwritten letter Adrian had written to himself on the evening he realized how easily assumptions could replace understanding. Oliver looked at every item with genuine curiosity. "Why did you keep these?" he asked softly. Adrian picked up the notebook and gently placed it into Oliver's hands. "Because this notebook reminds us that paying attention can protect the people we love." Liam then lifted the folded letter and smiled. "And this letter reminds us that asking honest questions is just as important as noticing careful details." Oliver slowly read the first sentence written across the top of the page. It simply said, "Never allow silence to tell a story that truth can explain." He looked toward both adults with thoughtful eyes. "So this is not really about old papers." Adrian smiled proudly. "No, it is about becoming better people because of what we learned together." That evening, the three of them walked into the garden where the maple trees had grown taller with each passing year. Golden leaves drifted gently across the stone pathway as the setting sun filled the estate with warm light. Oliver carefully carried the notebook back to the library before returning outside to join Adrian and Liam beneath the oldest tree. None of them spoke for several peaceful moments because no words were necessary. The greatest mystery of their lives had ended long ago, but its lesson continued growing stronger with every passing season. Adrian quietly realized that the most valuable thing Liam had ever protected was never a piece of clothing or a laboratory report. It was the trust that held their family together. And from that day forward, whenever Oliver faced uncertainty, he remembered the lesson that shaped the home he loved most. The strongest relationships are never built upon perfect first impressions. They are built by people who choose patience, honesty, and understanding before allowing assumptions to become lasting beliefs.